That's 7 o'clock on the dot, folks. Welcome to the Planning Committee. And welcome to those at home who are tuning in via the internet and also those in the audience. We've got no members of the esteemed press here tonight. And I've not been made aware of any fire drills, but if the fire alarm does go, then please make your way through the news exits and assemble at the front of the building, please. First item on the agenda this evening is apologies. Do we have any apologies? That's no. No apologies. Item 2, declarations of interest. I have one declaration of interest for myself on item 4 of the agenda, as I'm a member of the Aspire board, so I shall vacate the chair at that point, and the Vice Chair, Nicholas Crisp, will take over for that item. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay. Item 3 of the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we in agreement that there's a true and accurate record of proceedings that occurred that night? If not, please identify now. Show of hands, please, in supporting that. Thank you. That's unanimous. That brings us on to first substantive item on the agenda, and this application for major development, land at St Luke's Close, Silverdale, Aspire Housing, item 4. I will now vacate the chair.
Right. Hello and good evening. Okay, so you have a presentation? Okay, take it away.
Thank you. So the application seeks full planning permission for the construction of 42 dwellings. The application site is positioned at the junction of Station Road and Sneed Terrace. See here on the map, so Sneed Terrace and Station Road. So it's within the urban area of Silverdale. The site lies adjacent to, but not within the Silverdale Conservation Area. So the boundary of the conservation area runs along Sneed Terrace. So these properties here are within the conservation area, but the application site is outside. The site was previously occupied, as you can see here on this location plan, by 14 bungalows and a 2-storey communal building, but those structures have been demolished and the site has been cleared. So this is a layout plan of the scheme. So the residential development would be split between a 3-storey building, which is on this part of the site, positioned over to the east, and 3 pairs of 2-storey buildings here towards the west of the site. So we've got 1, 2, 3 pairs. A new point of access is proposed from Station Road. The existing access is slightly further to the south than the proposed one. So the main 3-storey building, got some plans of that to show you. So this is the elevation facing Station Road, and this is the elevation facing to the rear onto the new access road. And that's facing the garden area. So you can see there the mix of materials that are proposed. But one particular feature to note is the use of tile hangings. So on this part of the building is traditional red brick with dark grey roof tiles, but part of the building, which you can see here, has would use hanging tiles that would carry on from the roof down onto the facing elevations at 2nd and 3rd floor, first and second floors, with the ground floor constructed from a lighter colour in contrast. So these are the 2-storey apartments, which would be housed within the 3 buildings positioned to the western corner of the site. Externally, these would have a more traditional appearance, really. So you can see those there. They look like traditional semi-detached properties that would continue the use of a similar materials palette to complement that of the main apartment building. So that's just showing you a coloured version, showing an example of the type of bricks that would be used. So these are some aerial views of the site, which provide a good view of what it will look like in 3D. So this is from the corner of Station Road and Sneed Terrace. So this is an existing area of substantial tree coverage, which will be retained. So here is the proposed new access into the site. The site then slopes up to this point, which is the relatively new dwellings that are built on Silverdale sidings. So that's showing the materials that I was talking about before. So you can see there the 2 parts of the building where you've got the brick and the darker tile, and then here you've got the tiles continuing down onto the elevations of the building. So again, another aerial view looking along the proposed new access into the site. So you can see the 3 smaller buildings at that point. A closer view of those 3 buildings. So before we just go through the photos, just go back to the site layout. So landscaping is proposed around the edges of the site, with a particular focus here in the southeastern corner and here in the southwestern corner. Parking would be provided within a communal car park that's here centrally within the site. So that would be screened by the proposed building and existing properties along Sneed Terrace. And then there's more car parking here, which is for the
it's not considered that there is elements of the ambulance in the sense of given the landscape people. So concerns have been made by objectors by the scale of the building, which is seen as being the obvious. What's the answer to is notably having design to there was a step back there's in service. So behind the environments so the coverage provides experience on the events of the local industry. It's like so there is one system so you said the subjects independently of one following precise details of which petition the arrangement is often proposed to the petition so the size and lives. So the speed of access of our spaces which relates to vision and 83% in vision. So while the proposed parking levels will be below maximum recommended, an analysis of schemes for similar developments that demonstrates parking vision which be to 7%. So it's accepted that given the side benefits from both sustainable transport links to local communities of the services, the also regular area the condition is recommended by the 16. So 16 trees are proposed for removing most facility in the scheme. But of these 16 trees in the sphere of the remaining trees assessed to be available. So whilst the most of those trees are the launch process considered there, yeah, it's not very fast specifically about the schemes there. This very so overall, the site applies a highly sustainable location. The site and layout is very well with these structures, strategy and there's all this area, offices, and that's the actual station. Essentially, it's a primary city. Right, so that's so that's this is the so the access. So that's showing the so that's so the sciences it's this is the boxes yes it is so this is the rear of the slide, so you can see that so that this is as is in the section. This is the existing substantial size, so it's this is it's the rest of the science. It's the science. It's knowledge. That's I feel some change.
Okay, and first up we have an objector to speak from Silverdale Parish Council. If you come up to the front, you'll have 5 minutes and Jeff will give you just a warning when there's a minute left.
Thank you, Chair. Henrik Adamchuk, Chair of Silverdale Parish Council. And I'm speaking against the proposal put before you. First of all, I'd like to point out that in Silverdale, for the census 2021, there were 257 dwellings classified as flats. That's under 10% of the housing stock. And the rest, that's 90%, were bungalows or houses. And altogether, if we add Brighton House, which was completed quite recently, and if we add this proposed development at St Luke's Close, the number of flats in Silverdale would increase to 318, which is a percentage increase of 23%. And all that increase is in the social housing sector. Well, some people, developers, planners, councillors, might think that's a good idea, a good thing, but we think it's not ideal in the chosen location. And the net effect of two socially rented schemes close together will have an impact on the overall character at the centre of Silverdale. Obviously, Brighton House, that went through planning in 2019. Can't do anything about that, but I can say something about St Luke's Close and focus on the density, because that is an important issue for us. In fact, it's the most important issue. First of all, there's a possible error in the capacity as outlined in the last draft local plan, which says policy SP22 land at the former playground of Ash Grove, Silverdale, is allocated for residential development of 36 dwellings. That's saying that the capacity is 36 dwellings. And then later it says demolition of 15 dwellings resulting in a net gain of 36. So in the Borough Council's own policy document, there's a mixture of capacity and net gain. They're different. And the difference might be small, but it's significant for us. There's a higher density in this development. The previous density was 20 dwellings per hectare. The new density under this particular scheme is 60. So that's an intensification of the site. And particularly the tight location and this raised density results in accommodation which exceeds the thresholds of the national recognised space standards. So it's 10% below the national space standards for one-bedroom flats and 16% below the standards for two-bedroom flats. If we look at the plans, the meagre private gardens for the 10 ground floor flats at Station Road, the private balconies for the 6 first and 6 second floor flats are small, but the one-bedroom flats lack gardens and have no balconies. There's a lot of shared corridor, staircase and lobby space. There's one lift for 20 apartments, and parking space coverage is well below 100%. For us, that amounts to a hemmed-in environment unlikely to promote well-being.
1 minute.
So what we're saying is that the extra floor detracts from the overall residential character in Silverdale's historic core, and we object to that. We've got no objection to the 3 sets of 2-storey flats. We think a density of 60 dwellings per hectare is very high, and we'll make sure that in our own neighbourhood plan, we won't have housing as close to the centre of our community of that size. And we urge the council to reject this scheme and replace it with one at 50 dwellings per hectare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We now have a supporter from Aspire Housing. If you'd like to come up. Again, 5 minutes, and Jeff will give you a warning at 1.
Well, good evening, Chair, members. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Paul Avon, one of the development managers at Aspire Housing. The site's been owned by Aspire since the stock transfer in 2000, and it was previously 14 post-war bungalows and a 2-storey community centre. As you're probably aware, due to the condition of the buildings, we've now demolished the site and it's cleared, and that was done on the previous application for the approval of the demolition. So the site is currently vacant and it presents a logical, sustainable opportunity for us to bring forward much needed affordable housing in the Borough and Silverdale. As set out in your officer's report, the National Planning Policy now regards developments in such settlements which meets needs for homes on brownfield land as acceptable in principle, and it provides a substantial positive weight in favour of such proposals. What this means is the development should be approved unless substantial harm would be caused by it. As you will see from your officer's report, all the consultees are satisfied that the proposed development would not give rise to any unacceptable impacts that would cause substantial harm. In terms of the benefits of Aspire's proposal, it will deliver 42 affordable homes split across the 3-storey apartment building and 3 2-storey buildings in a maisonette format. The provision of these affordable homes will help make an urgently needed contribution to addressing the borough's current shortfall in the supply of affordable homes. The proposal has been shaped for extensive engagement with your officers, elected members through the council's SPCG committee, and on the back of feedback Aspire has got from its consultant team, which we received from Design Midlands following an independent design review which took place in Silverdale. We're confident that the scheme will deliver high quality residential development which satisfies all the policy provisions in respect to design and layout, and that it respects the amenity of the occupiers of the residential properties that bound the site. Aspire have also been proactively engaged in discussions with the local highways authority, which has resulted in us making several relatively modest amendments to the arrangements of the internal road layout. This is due to a culverted watercourse which runs through the entire Silverdale village. So we've had to bring forward the scheme whereby a section of the internal road will have to be unadopted because of the position of the culvert. The county highways have confirmed that this approach is acceptable. And as a result of this, we've also had to make some consideration around the location of the bin stores and how we'll manage those going forward. The scheme includes the 35 car parking spaces, of which 2 will be allocated for disabled users. There'll also be provision for electric car chargers as well. Just in terms of the previous comments around the space standards and the national described space standards, we've got Homes England funding identified for this scheme, and they're supportive in principle meeting units that meet 85% of the NDSS, the national described space standards. But on this scheme, we've actually provided the bedrooms at 100% of that standard. So we are meeting the requirements that are being asked for. We think the application presents the committee with an opportunity to approve a sustainable, affordable housing development which is entirely in accordance with the provisions of the national and local planning policy. And in these circumstances, we believe that the case for granting planning permission is compelling, and I would urge you to therefore resolve to grant planning permission in line with the recommendation of your officer. That's it, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Okay, shall we open up for debate? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I was pleased to hear that there's going to be a car park management scheme, because I was concerned about both the number of parking spaces and also in relation to car parking spaces being demarcated. We've got a new development just next door where there's been issues where parking spaces weren't allocated to certain dwellings. There was problems with demarcation. So I'd like maybe the officer to talk me through that, and also percentage of disabled parking spaces and how we're going to make sure that those cars needing charging, there won't be any difficulties when people can park in any space, because there clearly isn't one space per dwelling. Thank you.
Well, as I referred to in my presentation, we're recommending a condition requiring a car park management plan. Excuse me. But the actual, how the details of that work haven't been submitted or agreed yet. So once we get that information that's required by the condition, then we would consult with the Highway Authority and seek their views on that. But some of the issues that you're raising there are management matters for the actual development and aren't planning matters. But so provided we're satisfied that there are a sufficient number of spaces, which the Highway Authority and your officers are satisfied, and they're happy with the number of disabled parking spaces, then yeah, your officers don't see that there's any material reason to object on the parking or the highway safety grounds, and the actual detail of how that will be managed will be set out within the terms of that condition. But we wouldn't be able really to control what would happen in the situation where somebody was parking in somebody else's space, for example. That is going outside of the remit of a planning condition, and that is an internal management aspect.
Thank you, Rachel. Could I just ask a follow-up question? At the point that the system is set up, would there be some sort of, would it be Aspire that would manage those kind of issues? Because these are the kind of issues that are reported to ward councillors, and we often have to deal with things that could lead to antisocial behaviour and whatever. So would you just give us some information on how I'd take that forward? Would that be in the remit of Aspire?
The honest answer is I don't actually know, because the mechanism of how it's managed isn't really for us as planning officers. So whether Aspire manage it themselves, or they may well do that, or they may have a management company that they employ to manage it. But we're not able to dictate which of those options happens. It's up to Aspire how they do that. But I think, if as ward councillors you were to get queries or concerns raised, I think Aspire would be your starting point, really.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councillor Gorton?
Thank you, Chairman. Right, I mean, I think the first thing that needs to be said is that this is a strong application. For me, there are two really strong points. One, the development is on a site that was developed previously, and my understanding is that at every level now we're being encouraged to look at and approve. I think the other aspect, obviously, is bringing in more rented accommodation. And once again, very important. And it's also, I think, pretty clear from what we've heard this evening from both our officers and from Aspire, and also from the material that's been circulated, that there's been quite a lot of effort to sort of mitigate the consequences of the development for the local environment. So, a number of trees will be preserved, which is good to hear. I've got a couple of queries, and I think the main one really is the impact of the 3-storey apartments on the sort of site, that location itself with the church and Sneed Terrace. And one thing I'd really welcome a bit more guidance on really is the screening that is going to be put in place to try and protect the sort of amenities of people living in Sneed Terrace, because it's going to be a big change for their environment. My second question really is, we do concentrate an awful lot on parking, I know, but in any of the calculations in terms of sort of parking provision, is any allowance made for visitors? Because I guess if the development goes ahead and you've got 2-bedroom flats you know, you're going to have quite a lot of people who know other people who are going to go down there and want to park. And I just wondered whether, in terms of the parking policy, whether any sort of allowances is made for that. Thank you.
I'll just respond on the parking issue first. I did set out that the parking provision here is less than the recommended maximum standards within the local plan. So we have to acknowledge that. But those maximum standards that are, and they are only a recommendation and they are a maximum standard, they do include within them provision for visitors. So I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's something like 1 space per flat plus however many visitor space per 4 flats or something like that. So the national, the maximum standards do include provision for visitors. In terms of the impact of the height of that building, I think this is probably the best image to show you. So from the main road here, and these are the existing properties along there, bearing in mind that there was a previous scheme here, so there was a reasonably large building in a similar location to this point previously, which has been demolished. So as you said, it's a previously developed site, so we're talking about a site that has always had development on there of a certain scale, albeit not at 3 stories. But I think, as I referred to in my presentation, the tree coverage here, and we saw that on the photos, is really substantial. There is a landscaping scheme that's being put together, and there is quite a lot of additional planting proposed within that. Just bear with me. Yeah, a landscaping strategy plan has been provided that proposes new tree planting, areas of wildflower lawn, ornamental planting to enhance biodiversity and landscape value. And it's considered that the landscaping strategy that's put forward would be sufficient to compensate the loss of the trees on the site. But in terms of, I think, were you concerned about impact on residential amenity of the existing properties, so in terms of overlooking, etc. Well, we've assessed that, and we're satisfied that the distances that are proposed between, just show you on here, that are proposed between the rear of the properties here and this is the 3-story building here, are sufficient to have an acceptable level of amenity. And it really, because of how that building is positioned, it's really only that end property that is directly facing that. And when I say directly facing, it isn't actually directly facing because that building is slightly off at an angle. But in any event, the distance between those properties and that building exceeds what is considered to be acceptable. So with a combination of the landscaping and a combination of the distance between the properties, we're satisfied that the residential amenity of the existing properties will be protected.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Gorton that this is an impressive application in its way. Looking at what was there before and what's proposed now, it's hard, in my mind anyway, not to see this as a planning gain. The properties there before were pretty awful, frankly. I also welcome the way that developer here has engaged with the council. We're seeing, I think, buildings that fit well the landscape of the conservation areas, so that in fact, if anything, this building, albeit larger, is much more consonant with the traditional centre of Silverdale than what we've seen before. I also think that it will be very hard to resist this application given the revised MPPF that we've seen, that it's very much in line with current thinking from central government. There are some things which concern me slightly. I mean, this is a high building, but again, I think as our officers have pointed out, there is a very substantial amount of tree cover that's been left there. The style of the buildings, as I say, fits with the rest of the village in a really rather good way, I think. And off the back of that, and again, you know, we live in an imperfect world, but I think here that the pluses very much outweigh the minuses. I would like to propose that we accept the recommendation as printed.
Okay, so we got a proposal from Councillor Fear. Anyone else want to add anything? Or Councillor Williams?
Yeah, it's better we didn't have that. I like Victorian taste houses, steam tanks, extended houses, opposite, which I can imagine like the ones I like as a three-story, but go to that height, but makes it not. It won't stick it like a salt on. If you look at the village itself, so with it, look at you, housing estate, behind, what they had in the country park, right up to Youth Bank, this side, on the road, to the left side, look at the part on the road is there. So, and this, the fact that the big story, I think, is I'm right in saying is in the middle of the state. State.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it should be shielded by two-story around the side. And it's good to see brick and great gable roofs. And recommend that that's where, you know, I think it is eventually, and like all new buildings will, over the years, blend in, not have. So nobody mentioned St. Street, 200 yards away, the trees, and it's whatever, shield, not from the sort of one story, flats. So I think, you know, in I would agree with the recommendation.
Okay. Would you like to second that, Councillor Williams?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a proposal and Councillor Williams has seconded it. Shall we take a vote? All those in favour? Okay, I think that is everyone. So the motion is passed.
Okay, on with this evening's business. Item 5 on the agenda, which is the application for major development, vehicle storage land, Linley Road talk. Presentation on this.
Thank you, Chair. A lot less to talk about on this one. So planning permission was granted in September last year for a new HGV service centre building at the existing vehicle storage area located on Linley Road, Torque. So got the Torque Crossroads here, a number of commercial, industrial developments along to the north of Linley Road. So at the moment it's a huge car storage site, and they received planning permission for a storage building, a service centre building, sorry, at the front of the site. So they're wanting to make some very minor changes now. So this is the footprint of the building that was approved. So we're doing a bit of a spot the difference here. So there we go as approved, and there we go as proposed. So the building, I suppose, turns round so that its longer elevation is fronting the road. And I'll just show you the elevations. So that was as approved, and that's what's proposed now. So the building is actually smaller than it was previously. We've only had to bring it back to the committee because it is an amendment to a major scheme. And initially the amendment that came in, the building was actually larger than the one that was previously approved, which is why it was down as a committee item. But then they revised it during the course of the application to make it smaller. So the approved one was 25 metres by 35 metres in footprint, and the proposed one is 22 by 27.5. So it's smaller on both in terms of length and width. The overall height of the building would remain as previously approved. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Rachel. There's no speakers identified for this item. Over to you, members. Councillor Williams.
Recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Really delighted in is bring jobs, professional jobs, to that particular area, and there's range of mechanics to the HGV service area. So I recommend permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Fear. Councillor Gillian Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Williams was kind enough to second my proposal on the last item. I'll repay the compliment. I can see nothing wrong with this and many advantages.
Yes, I think I'm leaning towards that. Councillor Jill Burnett.
I was just going to say the same. I'd second it. So,
Any other members wishing to speak on this item? Well, in which case, we've had it formally proposed and seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support of the application as printed? And that is unanimous. Thank you. That item is permitted. Item 6 of the agenda is Register of Locally Important Buildings and Structures in Newcastle 2024 review.
Nothing really to add to the report. It's really more of as an information report for members. Just that a review has been carried out of our register of locally important buildings and structures, and you will see from the report that 11 buildings and structures are now proposed to be added to the register with the amendment to 2 existing entries. So the list of proposed additions are shown there on the report. So yeah, nothing else to add.
Thank you, Rachel. Members, you will have had a chance to read this report. From the chair, I'd like to move that we go with the sorry, Councillor Williams, go ahead.
The question really, a lot of activity been in, Church Street, looks known as Church Lane. With the used to be a cinema many years ago and a pub on the corner. Is it the building shop that's, it was a charity shop at the top that's closed? And then is the next building down, is it? Or is it like I say, the
Sorry, which one are you referring to?
which building is it what we're referring to?
We're on the register of, we're not on the actual Church Street one, we're on the register of buildings. So this is a list of extra ones. Yeah, we'll do Church Street in a minute, yeah.
Don't
So,
worry,
yeah.
John. Councillor Gould.
Quick question, really, Chairman, for my own information. Is the Borough Council still accepting nominations for inclusion of properties on the register? Or I wasn't quite clear from the report.
I think it's done, I don't know how often it's done, but it's certainly done regularly. So it's probably stopped accepting them for this review, but there will undoubtedly be another one. I'm not entirely sure when. I can find that out for you and let you know. And so, yeah, there'll be another opportunity to add buildings on. Yeah.
Councillor Fear.
I think the officer has just responded to that query. My understanding is this is a living document, so that as I'm sure our officer is right, that this particular instantiation of the document has now come to its finalisation, but there will be another one. And I think that's really important, actually. I mean, it allows the community to engage and say, these are the things which are valuable to us. This is what we'd like to preserve about Newcastle. So this is, I think, a really welcome document to have. And I welcome this version of it. And I look forward to further versions of this in the future.
Any other members wishing to speak? In this case, I formally propose from the chair that members agree to the proposed additions to the register as set out in section 2 of this report. Do I see a seconder? Councillor Fear, thank you. All those in support of this, please raise your hands. Thank you. And that's unanimously passed. Thanks. Councillor Williams, you'll be pleased to know we are on item 7. Application for financial assistance, historic buildings grant, 3 Church Street, Newcastle. Rachel?
Yeah, I've not got anything to add, but referring back to Councillor Williams's question, so you were asking which building this is exactly on Church Street. Right, well, that's a very good question. You just have to bear with me while I try and I'm just going to have a look on Google Maps because I'm not entirely sure.
Mr. Chairman, could I just say, well, the officer's looking that a lot of work has gone on the properties down there. As I say, some good and some not so good. Whatever they're going to be, houses of multiple occupation or whatever. But the second one down used to be an old saying, oh, St Perkins dance hall. That the mess you've left behind is a bit terrible. I've reported it, but of course they've come and gone now. So I'm concerned that where we are giving grants, it is to a company or developer that's actually going to do that work and make that area better than it is at the moment. Thank you.
For a company with a conscience, basically. Yeah, that would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Well, apologies for doing it like this, but so this property here is 5A. So I'm assuming that that is number 3.
So it says the 9 sliding dispatch. Maybe it's less.
Yeah. You wouldn't, no.
Yeah.
That one we didn't go to the stuff, that's what we was.
Because it says now it's nice and such good things. I'm looking at the state of it, it's just being solid. Yeah.
It's the one with the black doors. You can see the number 3. Yeah, you zoom in on it.
It is.
Yes.
Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Fear.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I sort of share Councillor Williams's worries about this. I mean, it's a very peculiar set of developments. This grant ostensibly would be very sensible. It would help preserve a historic facade in an important place. What I'd just like to ask the officer is there any way in which we can check up on this? I sort of share Councillor Williams' concern that this is a good grant. I've nothing against the grant, but I would like to see the fruits of our grant, so to speak. And indeed, if those fruits are not there, I would like to see that money recovered. That would be my question. And what guarantees do we have in that regard?
Well, I remember quite some time ago when we had one of these historic building
Grants on there. Councillor Gorton asked the question about, because it said something about that it was approved but subject to conditions, what the standard conditions. And I remember asking our conservation officer to send those, to let you know what those conditions were. Can't remember what they were, but it may well be that within that set of conditions, there's a requirement to carry out the work within a certain time period. Or so what I'll do is I'll check that and I will circulate that information, because yeah, it makes sense, because otherwise we could be giving this grant and then they're not doing what they should be doing with it. So I'm sure that there will be some sort of a check, but I'll let you know. Sorry, ma'am.
We not condition that.
It's not an application for planning permission, as it's the giving of the grant. So I think we'd be governed by, we could only attach what the there are conditions, and it may well be that they're covered, but I don't know what they are.
I'm just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that it seems to me that probably those caveats are in place through the grant thing. Perhaps what I could ask for, I don't think this is a particularly onerous thing, is that something is brought back to this committee showing that the due discharge of those conditions.
Absolutely, and apologies, I couldn't answer the question fully tonight. So yeah, we'll bring that back to you.
Other members wishing to speak on this item? Can we see a proposal for or against? Councillor Fear.
I'm happy to propose this, Mr. Chairman, with that caveat that we get a report back that the conditions of our grant have been discharged.
I'm happy to second that, Councillor Fear, from the chair. Can I see a show of hands, please, in support of the application as printed? And that's unanimous. Thank you. This item's passed. Brings us on to a favourite. Item 8 on the agenda, land at Dodderspool, Betley. Now, there is a small report. Members will have been able to have a look at that. Is there any further update? So are we content, members, to receive this information and to keep it on the agenda in the future? Can I see a show of hands in support of that, please? Thank you. That's unanimously passed. Any urgent business? Urgent business. There's no urgent business this evening, which is just left for me to say thank you very much for your attendance this evening. The meeting is now closed. Thank you. Have a safe journey home.